Okay.
Take it away,
All
Stuart.
right. Good stuff. Well, thank you. This is our kind of favorite PSA that we like to remind people that cesspools near the coast are like toilets on the beach. And it's just a reminder that this is what we're protecting, our nearshore waters, our streams, our surface waters, and our groundwater. So go to the next slide. And this, this presentation today is all about, making sure that we don't waste our wastewater, because now we're starting to realize that there's so much that we can do with it. And so we're going to try to work on technologies that reclaim our liquid and solid waste. Great. And so this is just the DOH list of priority areas across the state. This is about 14,000 cesspools across the state. They're all total 88,000 at least. We suspect they're more than that. And they release about 53 million gallons per day of untreated sewage into our groundwater. As many on the call know and helped to do, including Ted Bolin, Act 125 was passed that mandates the upgrading of all cesspools by 2050. And so we're looking at strategies about how to do that, including really innovative technology, new funding measures, and we're going to be enhancing and updating our prioritization with DOH soon, as part of the Cesspool Conversion Working Group. And this is just a visual representation. This was done as part of my article in Hawaii Business Magazine a year and a half ago. And the areas in yellow are the priority areas across the state. And then the little brown dots are clusters of cesspools around the state. So you can see it cuts across every demographic and every geographical area in Hawaii. And the ones we're really focused on first are the priority areas.
And as you were probably able to see, some of these brown circles representing the cesspools on the map were clustered very densely right next to many others, and others were not so dense, just sort of by themselves. And so you can see for urban areas here, like this one pictured, sewer, centralized sewer, municipal sewer is really very good in terms of economic feasibility, because you have a lot of water going in and you can not treat it on site. There's just simply not enough room. So it needs to be processed somewhere central, and the money calculations of that work out. And so for urban areas, as it is already in most urban areas in Hawaii, there is centralized sewer, and that is hopefully expanding further and further where it makes sense. In very rural areas where the houses are few and far between, the concept of sewer does not make sense. What instead makes sense is the individual wastewater system concept, IWS as we call it. And that means that the wastewater generated is treated and disposed of in the same property where it's generated. You can see here kind of a screenshot of what that rural area might look like with just a few houses. Sorry for that construction noise. And then that leaves the middle ground that you might call suburban. 50 to 100 houses clustered together, and it's not enough for municipal sewer, but it feels too much for just an individual wastewater system. So what can be done with this middle ground? I'll kick it back to Stuart.
Thank you, Yoko. And so in my recent Civil Beat article that some of you might have seen, if you have trouble falling asleep at night, I recommend reading it. It should do the trick. But one of the highlights was, focusing on the federal funding that's available, and also this middle ground that Yoko mentioned. Instead of the big sewer plants for urban areas or the individual cesspool conversions in very rural areas, we're looking at this third option for households in more traditionally defined suburban areas, where we can maybe install a distributed sewage management system, as Senator Schatz referred to it in the article. And so this is, sometimes referred to as like package plants and such. And so this is an opportunity for us, as you can see in the slide, to do these more clustered systems where, the homes are close enough apart where you could do some kind of low pressure sewer system lines where you don't have to dig up all the streets to do big sewer lines, where it's just not feasible or affordable. It's estimated it's about at least $1 million a mile for sewer lines. Whereas this, you can trench on the side of the road with, whether you use flow vac systems or E1 systems, whatever your choice, then that are much smaller, and take it to a centralized little plant that's, in a decentralized area. So this fits ideally between 20 and 200 homes. And that range can vary. And then we have the opportunity to demonstrate like a real circular economy approach at a scale that's much more manageable, that we can have resource recovery, where we can process the sludge waste and then hopefully produce clean water as part of that. So it's really the difference between, a kind of linear approach and a circular economy approach. In the current situation, with municipal plants, we pump these things and spend lots of money and pumping stations to get them to a centralized wastewater treatment plant. But then generally we're, putting the silos, the liquids out to sea. We spend all this money treating it, and then we're not reusing it. And the solids, after dewatering and treating, they're either in Honolulu, sent to H-Power, or on most neighbor islands and smaller plants sent to the landfill. Whereas what we're trying to do is say, hey, we can treat and reuse the liquids on site for irrigation and other uses, and do the same for solids, recovering the nutrients. Yoko, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so focusing first on the liquids, we've previously introduced this company before that we partner with, and we want to introduce quickly again Cambrian, which is a company that provides not only cutting edge treatment technology, but also innovative financing methodology. And they rose to prominence in the brewery sector, treating more high strength wastewater, but now they're pivoting to municipal wastewater as well. And the exciting part for Hawaii especially is the WEPA, the Water Energy Purchase Agreement. You can see here on the left the schematic of what that might look like. Wastewater is treated at the plant, and then either renewable energy or clean water or both can be brought back to the community to be reused. And they bring intelligent 21st century technology as part of this into the equation. And this water can then be reused for irrigation. For example, R1 water can be reused for spray irrigation.
Thank you. And like I said, we're going to have Q&A. We want a robust question and answer session, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. We've got folks from Cambrian here, as well as biomass. So we're lucky to have them joining, some of them from the East Coast. Like my friend Jeff Hollowell, who is the founder and was the CEO, is now the chair of Biomass Controls. I met Jeff at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Reinvented Toilet Expo in Beijing in 2018. And the director of the whole program internationally said, you need to meet this guy. You guys are going to hit it off. And so 2.5 years later, we've been talking regularly, and we're just convinced that this technology is just kind of state of the art and can help us, with a lot of different issues, but really processing a lot of our sludge waste from our treatment plants. But they've got a number of different patents. It's a very unique and an innovative technology that captures much of the the greenhouse gases and can produce quality biochar that can be used for many, have many different uses. And so any technical questions we can ask Jeff. But what they basically are doing, which is really exciting for us, is we're avoiding trucking sludge to landfills. And there are multiple inputs that you can use with this. So we're working with Jim Mothersbaugh, Water Tectonics, who operates a wastewater treatment plant in Maui at McKenna. And he makes 90 trips where he has to pay for haulers to take the sludge waste from a relatively small wastewater treatment plant to a landfill that's already full. And so we want to avoid that. And instead, we can mix different inputs, whether that's ag waste, green waste, manure, and food waste. And we can mix it in with the sludge and create this biochar, which we can use for carbon capture. It's a negative carbon because we're not going to get to carbon neutrality without doing carbon negative strategies. And we can also, create energy that helps make it self-sufficient and be able to run off the grid, because that's what they were designed for in many developing countries where they're working in India and Africa. And like I said, there are different inputs that can be used, from toilet waste, which they're doing in India, livestock, which they're doing in America, and food resources, which they're working on right now. And you can see they have all kinds of partnerships. Originally, we're working with the Gates Foundation and are funded by them, and have since expanded and won a lot of recognition for their work. And the benefits for biochar are what are really kind of impressive to me, because we can use it for filtration, for stormwater runoff. And so we have a project that we're working on in McKenna to use it for stormwater runoff, but you can also use it for odor control. It filters contaminants, including heavy metals, in PHAs and in PHHs and PFOS and PFOS. And you can really focus in on certain nutrients that you're looking to isolate. And then the pathogen is almost 100% reduction of pathogens. You can use it as a soil amendment to increase crop yields. And we're working with some of the top biochar experts in the country at Cornell and at Colorado State University, and then Susan Crow here at Manoa. And we're hoping to, really create products that can be sold. Just as composting can produce very rich soil, we can produce biochar that can have a number of uses. It increases enhanced water retention, and most importantly, it's a carbon sink. As I mentioned, it does carbon sequestration. It reduces the volume by over 90%, and also can help with resist erosion. And so originally this was practice used by ancient indigenous people in the Amazon, and it's still some of the most fertile land, and shows that it has more water retention and stability against erosion, and then can help us, the counties in the state, meet their carbon neutrality goals.
So to give y'all a case study for each of these companies that we just introduced, in Ma'alaya, as we're lucky to have Tapani on the call today, that is where Cambrian is being strongly considered right now, because not only is the technology needed where the wastewater is treated to a very high degree, but also the financing model of only a monthly fee based on the amount of gallons treated has to be paid, and no initial capital expense for the town and the condos. And the added benefit is that the agricultural land near Ma'alaya and this very dry part of Maui can really use this recycled water for irrigation. And there's enough land to host this community-sized plant. And then for biomass controls, we are happy to be working with the company Water Tectonics in Makena, also on Maui. And the process there would look like this: the wastewater from the community goes to an already existing treatment plant, which produces sludge. This sludge is then transported, or is on site, transported easily to the biomass controls unit, the biogenic refinery, where through pyrolysis, it is turned into biochar, which then can be reused on site in the community itself as part of the innovation center, which will be created there, that we're very excited about.
And so, this basically shows kind of an overview of what we're talking about, that if we were able to, there's some parts on the Big Island, as Ramsey is heroically struggling with, to where we could combine biomass controls and Cambrian and offer literally 100% recycling of our liquid and solid waste, and be an example literally for the world, where we could be one of the few sites in the world that's offering 100% recycling. And so this is just extremely exciting, because Paul Hawken, in his new book, not so new anymore, but his book Drawdown, has really elevated the process of making biochar and turning our waste into biochar as one of the top ways to mitigate for the effects of climate change. And so it really does create this circular economy where we can use the biochar on the land as a soil amendment, or for stormwater filtration, or to help protect against soil erosion. We can use that to increase our yield for crops, and also use that food waste and the waste from our communities in putting that back into the system. And so Cambrian can produce clean drinking water that can go back to our ag, or to, in case of McKinnon, like agroforestry, or in Ma'alaya, even having like a fire break, and lines of trees that just will help, contain that water. And we've already worked with the neighbors there, and they're interested in getting the water. So, and then the sludge that they produce could be processed by biomass and turned into this biochar, completing the cycle. So we're extremely excited about the prospects of really trying to make Hawaii one of the centers of waste innovation in the world. Tomorrow we're excited. We're talking to the author, Chelsea Wald, of the new book, Pipe Dreams, which you haven't read, is a really fascinating book about reinventing sanitation, that we basically need a revolution in sanitation. There it is. It's an amazing read, believe it or not. It's not, I thought this might be something for folks just like us who are interested in wastewater issues, but it's really well written. And she says this is just part of how we have to rethink the whole system. Because I was on a call today with Chip Fletcher and others for the Office of Environmental Quality Control, and we are at, really the point where we have to make big changes to deal with climate change, because it is on us. And as they made really potently clear, we are going to be suffering the effects from it. So we have to find ways to do carbon negative things like this, and really treating our waste, we think, is one of the best examples. So enough talking on our part. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening, and we'd love to get some questions and feedback from you all. Thank you for joining us, Nancy.
I gotta go. Thanks. I'm excited. This is great. Okay.
Aloha. All right. Thank you for joining us, Barry. We just finished, but we can send you the presentation that we just did. And it's about the prospect of producing 100% kind of first in the country recycling of our liquid and solid wastes.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah.
Apologies for being late, but
No. I just, you got last minute. I realized I hadn't sent you an invitation, so that's my bad. So questions and comments?
Stuart, I got one. I guess maybe there's an opportunity for us. I got my digesters at the Hilo treatment plant. They both went down. So I was listening to your biomass unit. How fast and how convenient that could be mobilized?
Yeah, I'll kick it to Jeff, I think, on that, since he's the co-founder of Biomass.
That's a great question. I believe that a mobile unit would be really important. I mean, we've made them containerized. There's no reason why they couldn't be on a trailer. I think mobile is the best way to go. So you could basically be processing as you go to the next site. So I do think that is a very viable option long-term. And there are some trucks out there already, some technology that separates liquid from solids, puts the liquid back in and takes the solids away. They use it in Canada in rural areas, and they also use it in Europe. So that might be a technology that could be suitable for that as well. And we've looked at integrating it. We've made proposals to the Gates Foundation, but to date, it has not been funded. But we are optimistic that that will happen in the future. So that was a great question.
So, yeah. And as far as these mobile units, what is your maximum capacity of treatment?
Right now, we do 2 tons per day. Generally, 10,000 people equal about 1 ton a day at 85% moisture. So 2 ton would be 20,000 people. We imagine the smaller system would probably be around 6,000 people, which would do about 3/4 of a ton in a 12-hour day. So I don't know if that
So
gives you
that
good indication.
biomass, the sludge then goes to your system after dewatering?
Correct.
Okay. So
But
we
we
still
can do
have
mobile.
to-
Yeah, we can do mobile dewatering, and that can be added to the system fairly easily with a screw press and have a water
Right.
tank there as well.
Okay. I'd like to get some info on it because I'm debating to go the conventional way and redesign and reconstruct the same type of digester, or go with something more. But I got 2.8 MGD, so coming into the facility. So I think at 37,000 pounds of sludge a day
Yeah.
prior to dewater. Yeah. So definitely I don't know if something I'd like to continue talking about it if you don't mind, or shoot me an email.
Yeah,
I was entertaining the idea of getting the mobile unit, and if it works, that's perfect segue into our island to say, okay, look what we could generate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can help set that up, Ramsey. And Louis, I don't know if you want to jump in as also, but Cambrian is also this model of a mobile containerized system. And so, I don't know about trucking it for emergency uses like that, but Louis, do you know if they've done something like that?
My knowledge, I don't think we've done that to date, but I don't see why we couldn't.
Yeah, so they can handle like the liquid waste, and then that's what we're working on in Malaya. So getting all the waste from, Malaya. I'm looking at Tapani. They have 10 condos there, and right now each one is treating their own, but there are 26 injection wells there that it's going into, and it's having an effect on the reefs. And so a system like Cambrian's, would also be really effective. And I'll let you jump in, Tapani.
Well, we have been monitoring the pay condition now for 25 years plus, because we actually operate under NIPTES permit. State of Hawaii, DLNR actually did a study on coral reef ecosystem coverage about 10 years ago or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. It's publicly available. As of today, the coral reef ecosystem coverage is about 7%, probably less today than it was when the study was done. 30 years ago, it was about 85%. So we see actually elevated nutrients, coming from leaching out from the condominium injection wells. General public is not generally aware that we have these injection wells here, and each condominium has 2 injection wells. They're about 40 to 60 feet in depth, and needless to say, there is a fairly high degree of nutrients leaching into the nearshore ecosystem. Not too many people either know that the Malaya Bay is actually classified as an impaired body of water by EPA 303D classification. So we are really intent on removing the injection wells here from the community. Like I said earlier, Poipo is another community in Hawaii that has a larger cluster of injection wells right next to near shore, ocean shore. So this is really quite urgent issue in my mind, and we are making some headway here in the community. We've really taken a collaborative approach in Cambrian and WAI Clean Water and Pacific Currents and Elemental Accelerator. Their consortium has been quite helpful in partnering with us, trying to come up with the solution. As far as the cost incentive for the community, we actually are able to offer a little bit better cost or lower cost for the community to switch over with the wastewater as a service. We are still actually in the process of finalizing the numbers because we have a conveyance issue because we are in the tsunami zone here. So the plant would have to be relocated uphill, as those of you who are familiar with our area. So it's going to require some additional funding. So that needs to be amortized into the service agreement. So, and we are looking at the legal structure right now, how we could actually manage this for the community in an integrated manner that works for the consortium as well. Obviously, they do not want to deal with a lot of individual properties. So this is kind of what we are working on, and we're making progress here in the community. Mayor Victorino now has he has a budget on his desk that hopefully he approves the funding for the public trust land. In the same Ahupua'a area, watershed area here, we have the Spencer land for those who have been to Maui. We have 257 acres of land that we are hoping to convert to public trust land. We've been working with the HILT, Hawaiian Land Trust, and also TPL, Trust for Public Lands. So looks like the state of Hawaii has indicated that they're willing to take some ownership of this as well. So the point that I'm making, and to cap it up a little bit, is it's really a holistic issue, in my opinion. It's not enough that we address one issue. We need to look at the entire watershed and really address these issues. And the work that Stuart and et al. Is doing on the cesspool. So this is very important because what's on the top of the mountain, it's going to come down.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tapani, for sharing that.
Yep.
And your input and your help with trying to find solutions for Malaya. Jeff is on the East Coast, so it's late there and he has to go, but I wanted to see if there were any more questions for him about biomass in particular, and the kind of the pyrolysis treatment that they offer and producing biochar.
Quick question. How do you deal with heavy metals, VOCs, PAH in the process? I'm sure I think you mentioned earlier that it captures it, but how do you actually deal with it so it doesn't go back into the earth?
Yeah, so I'm not really the biochar expert, but basically if it's in biochar, it's not bioavailable. And also it's more diluted because it is in the carbon, because we keep the carbon. There's actually a lot of carbon in human waste. And by keeping that, rather than reducing it to ash, you're already diluting it, doing it that way. We typically don't take industrial waste right now, so we're not expecting a lot of heavy metals coming from residents. We do see it in hospital areas where they're doing treatment like for cancer and other types of things. So we're just very selective on the input and really knowing what's going on in that community. We haven't had any issues yet, but we do check the loads when they come in, and we make sure before we process it, if there's an issue, we try to resolve it. But in the past, dilution was a solution to pollution, but we try not to take things that are harmful to the environment right up front. And we usually know the source where it's coming from, so it's very easy to track. So that was an excellent question. As far as PAHs, we do use catalytic technology. So we do get rid of the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And so it's through it's through a chemistry process similar to what would be in a car, but it's really designed more for biosolids. And really that's part of our secret sauce and part of the patents that we have as well, is how do we process it and make it clean? Because we don't want to take a water and a land pollution problem and turn it into an air pollution problem. So air quality is very important to us. Also off of our dryers for H2, once you dry it, you reduce a lot of the H2S, but we do use the biochar as a carbon filter for air coming off of our system as well. So carbon is excellent. So we believe that before biochar is used as a soil amendment, you can use it for air filtration, water filtration, and then as a soil amendment. So it has multiple uses. And so that reuse can really happen over and over again, which does help air quality, water quality, and it can also be used for water filtration for turbidity and take out nutrients as well. And there's a lot of information on kind of different technologies that are different temperatures that you can use to make the biochar to capture different types of metals. And biochar is actually used for filtration of heavy metals out of water. And there's a lot of literature on that as well that I'm sure we can dig up and share with Stuart and Yoko, and could get back to you.
Which could be really super useful in Maalaea in areas like that, to reduce the runoff before it gets into the bay. So yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jeff.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other final questions for Jeff? And if anyone like Ramsey wants to, if you want to set up a meeting, just let us know. We'll make it happen with Jeff at Biomass or with Lewis and the folks at Cambrian. We're just trying to introduce them and get them into communities and bring new technologies. So I know it's late there, Jeff. Mahalo for joining us. Good seeing you. Other questions that you all might have? Yeah, Ted.
I was wondering if this technology could be used as part of the solution for Kahaluu on Oahu.
And more specifically for like the cesspool conversions there, or?
Yeah.
Because we're also looking at, Heia and the fish pond and using biochar. We've been talking with folks at Paipai Heia and other partners of this would be great to kind of put around the fish ponds as a natural filtration and erosion protection. As far as the connection system for something like, a Cambrian system, Kahaluu is a little tough. So that, because it's kind of rural, but it's almost suburban. And so it's like right in that mix. And so can you affordably put those areas together? Like if they're large clusters, and I'll let Yoko jump in with this. Thank you for bringing up that map. If they're large clusters together, it could definitely work, like some of these areas. If they're further apart, it would be difficult to link them all up to one system. But Yoko, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So this is one of those gray areas where if you look at Kaneohe here, the reason that there are no cesspools in the streets that I'm pointing at where the word Kaneohe is to be seen on the bottom right is that there's municipal sewer. And municipal sewer stops here. not because anybody thinks that the people above it don't need it, but because at the time when it was constructed, that's when the money ran out. And so this right here, the blue area is Kahalu, the priority area. I'll talk about this area right here in Heia a little bit first, because this would be an ideal candidate for this type of system, because you have, as you can see, I'm zooming in a little bit here, you have all the houses on sort of a hillside facing down. The lowest point is the Kahikili Highway. So if you would have a central location, maybe around here, all the water could flow with gravity into that centralized or decentralized, as we call it, community scale treatment plant. This is just about the right number of houses, just around 100. That would work really well. So if areas like this could be emulated within Kahalu, for example, here we're looking at Ahui Manu. This one's a bit tough because the slopes, some of them go away from the highway. So it's a little bit then an issue of pumping, but this cluster here looks great. This is the right number, the right density. And then I think there's one more, there's one right down here, Wailehua Road. So obviously if sewer does come into this area, that would be likely the best option just because there's municipal sewer right there. But if for some reason municipal sewer says it's not going to happen, then yes, these sub areas of Kahalu would be fantastic for Cambrian and biomass.
And one of the challenges that we have with that, and we have Council Member Mason Chalk from Kauai on the line, if he's available. You know, you have to do something like this for a Cambrian system in a community like that, you'd have to do like a sewer improvement district, an SID, and that can be, you know, like if 60% of the homeowners agree to do this, then it can happen. We can move forward and get bonds and everything. And Mason and Luke Evslin, another council member, really like have done a lot of research in this and are really kind of at the tip of the spear and kind of looking into solutions for Kauai. But that is one of the challenges. Or you either get 60% of the population or the county council, if they vote to say this is a good solution, this is what we want to do, then it can happen that way. From what we understand, that's in Honolulu, and we're looking at the neighbor islands to make sure that's the case. But you know, I don't know if Mason or Barry or Ramsey have any insight into that.
We're also working on a summary document that'll come out very soon, showing exactly the ins and outs of the sewer improvement district process and the community facilities district process, which is similar.
Yeah, it is kind of difficult. I know I met with you guys. We had a Zoom about the Pahala community, if you recall. And because we have what we call the Kona decision that kind of prevent privatization or private entity to come in and do a treatment system, especially for municipality. But let's say if you, you know, around the island, you have private communities, you're right, they could create a district, a sewer district in a sense. They need 50 plus 1% to generate enough votes, and that be going through a resolution with the county to approve that district. And then once it's approved, it become funded by the homeowners. They create a fund to cover the cost of operation and maintenance and the capital cost. But my understanding, you guys will fund that capital cost and, you know, collect it from them anyway. So there's no upfront cost for them. So it'll be broken over X amount of years, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that something is doable.
Yeah, and I think the only cost would come because Cambrian can come in and with no upfront capital costs and set this up, but the conveyance system would be the challenge. But then that's when local money, the bonds, could be used to pay for the conveyance system, and then you wouldn't have all the millions and millions of dollars of upfront capital costs and operating costs.
Yeah, and we looked at Pahala. I think the collection system, the conveyance system was about almost $11 million just for 200 homes. Actually less, about 165 homes at a 10 to $11 million. And definitely that's where the cost is. Different areas may be cheaper because here on the Big Island, you have to cut through blue rocks and lava rocks, and we don't have soil. So it gets expensive.
Julia, did you have a question too?
I did. I actually wanted to bring up an opportunity, which I think I mentioned to you, Stuart, last time you were on island here. But the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force, which is a national working group with a whole host of federal agencies, is coming to Kona. They're having their meeting in Kona this November. And I sit on the watershed working group on the Coral Reef Task Force as the representative for the priority watersheds in South Kohala. So they have actually asked me, what would you like to have a workshop on? And I've been tasked with sort of planning a workshop. And the topic that we've landed on is innovative technologies and innovative financing for wastewater. At just about the scale that you folks are talking about, using, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the region, South Kohala is the district with Puako in it, which we've been, working through that process slowly for about the past 10 years now on identifying sewage impacts in coastal waters, and now working with the Coral Reef Alliance and you folks at the county, Ramsey, to try to make something happen there. But in any case, I'd love to pick your brain, Stuart, at some point, and maybe Ramsey, if you're interested in talking through. I'd really love to see that opportunity with, to bring national attention to specifically issues that we have here on the Big Island, and ideally provide some tangible opportunities and catalyze some good work here. So I just met with Hudson Slay at the EPA this morning, who's been on the task force for ages. And I think we'd like to start sort of a planning team. So wanted to see what this group thought about that, and if anyone's interested in helping me think through how we make it productive.
We would love to join, Julia. That sounds exciting. I'm glad to hear that that's what they ended up focusing on after we talked a couple months ago. So that's great. We'd love to be involved, and as needed, we can start to talk with these other partners if you want to bring them in to do presentations. But yeah, that's exciting. And when is that again?
It's November 13th through the 20th. And I think the day specifically set aside for this workshop would be later in the week.
Yeah, you said it right. I've been working with Erica Perez, and actually I just had a conference call with her last week. I had the opportunity to review all of their engineering reports and kind of give her some recommendation. And definitely that the situation they are in, it could be perfect for the Cambrian unit, or system.
Yeah.
So yes, based on what I read, and that's pretty much what I recommended to her, is because they could create a district. They got the people, they got the backing behind them, they got probably the 50 plus 1%. So I think that'll be, a good segue into introducing that Cambrian. I know we also been working with Hawaii Water with them, because Hawaii water is nearby next to the American water of Hawaii, Manalani Resort. It's next door. So there's a lot of different options, but yes, I know they've been working on it for the last 15 years or so. But I told her, let's stop spending money on planning. Let's go to
Right?
action. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because, you know, they, to their credit, that community really realized a problem with the coral reef decline. And if we can avoid what happened in, you know, in Malaya, where they've just, the coral cover has just decreased dramatically. We don't want that to happen. So, you know, we need, Christina pointed that out. It's like, this is urgent. You know, we're losing coral reef cover, and we don't have time for more and more studies when there are solutions that are viable and ready to go. So that's a great point.
Barry,
Yep.
I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Stuart and Joachim. The map that you showed of Kahalu and initially you pointed to haiku plantations. Yeah, I didn't know there was all cesspools there. Heia wetland is being restored, yeah, and they have a fish pond. So, in fact, yesterday the Water Commission just cut our production by like 85% in a haiku tunnel, so that more stream flows would be provided. But you know, as they use more stream flow there, I'm wondering if you folks had any water samples on, you know, bacteria, E. coli, or anything in Heia stream below that haiku plantation, or on Yolika stream. Would you happen to know if they took any samples there? Because I mean, if so, then I think the community would be motivated to do something about it.
Yeah. Christina, Christina's on the East Coast, so she might not be available. But she's our water quality expert who's been working with folks in Heia. So
I'll send you an email on that then. I mean, I'm just kind of curious to see if there was any kind of water sampling, because if there's a, you know, like Kahalu estuary was like super high. I don't know about Heia stream, but and I don't even know if the farmers know that. So that would be good to understand, and there may be motivation to do some systems like these over there. So thank you.
Christina, thank you, Barry. Christina, you want to jump in?
I had just stepped away for a minute. We're talking about Heia watershed and if there's water sampling going on there. Okay, I caught that second half of that.
Yeah, because of haiku plantation seems to be all on cesspools.
Yes, yeah. So there's definitely a research effort that's growing in that watershed because of the Heia near the
Right.
National Estuarine Research Center that's in the fish pond, basically managed down at the fish pond. So they are doing sensor deployments upstream and in the fish pond, looking at water quality. They did a little bit of work looking at sewage indicators in algal tissue in the fish pond itself, but they haven't done any sewage specific work in the stream or like further up in the watershed yet. So that's something that we're kind of in the process of, you know, looking for funding that would support that kind of work. And I think it is definitely really valuable. We're also talking to Surfrider about getting Enterococcus measurements going, which is not a human specific indicator, but it would be helpful. So that's on the table as well. And yeah, Surfrider does have measurements at the Kahaluu boat ramp, so which is really polluted. It's pretty much every single time. It's far above the threshold for Enterococcus. Yeah, I think that in all of these locations, there's a gap in terms of like sewage specific, wastewater specific indicators. So if we can get some funding to do more specific research, that's great. There's lots of folks who are working on all different kinds of methods, and yeah, that's something that I really want to nail down is getting good standardization of wastewater specific indicators that we can use throughout the state.
So I'll bring it up with Kaneko Schultz at Kakuivi and Kavika Winter with NEAR there. We've contracted with USGS to do some stream seepage studies in Heia and Ile de Ka. So maybe like you say, sewage indicator testing would be interesting to add. They're just looking at quantity for now, but
Yeah.
it'd be something interesting to think about and pursue perhaps. And if there are positive results like that, then I think they want to know. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. And we had talked with Kaivi and we mentioned it to Gavika as well. Of, if you brought like a biomass unit in there as they're clearing the hundreds of acres really that they want to do for the farmland there, you're going to have so many invasives. So if you could mix somehow like food waste from their agricultural output with invasives and maybe even introduce some of the sludge waste from collect that from nearby areas, you could take care of it on site and have this biochar that you could put on the land instead of hauling all of that off, because like I mentioned earlier,
natural fertilizer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got a lot of the nutrients they want. And a smaller plant in McKenna, does 90 trips a year to the landfill. And it's about $2,000 a trip, and the landfill is going to be closed and it's already full. So anything we can avoid taking to the landfill and put it back on the land, use as a carbon sink, is just ideal. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Yeah, Tapani.
Yeah, thanks, Mason, about the sucralose chemical indicator. Yeah, that's definitely on Kauai. The Kauai Surfrider group has been working with sucralose, and that's a good indicator that's kind of up and coming in terms of a wastewater specific indicator. We don't have a lab in Hawaii that's able to process the samples, so that's the main holdup with that. But yeah, we can take sucralose water samples for sucralose and ship them to the lab in Florida that does that testing. And I think there's also some conversations going on with UH Manoa to possibly set up one of their gas chromatographers to do the sucralose testing as well. So yeah, so hopefully it would be great to get that set up.
Well, yeah, thank you both for that update and input. Tapani, did you have a question?
For Barry, on Maui, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council has done a lot of citizenship science here. Then they have been successful in mobilizing a lot of the local community on measuring E. coli and enterococci readings around Maui, and they are actually scaling the operations up further and further. So if you have interest, I would recommend you talk to Robin Newbolt or Larry Stevens or Amy Hutches and Maui Nui Resource Council, and be happy to put you in touch if you have an interest in talking with them.
Thank you, appreciate that.
All right. We try to keep this around an hour. Any final comments or questions? All right, great. Well, thank you. This is exciting. We look forward. Well, Julia will follow up with you for sure. Thank you for the input and questions, and to each of you really for your leadership on this issue, because it's something that we really need to help educate the public about. And the Cesspool conversion working group, we're hoping to wrap up this year and really start doing recommendations. And also just mention again, we'll be holding our second Innovations in Sanitation convening, and that'll be most likely it's going to be August 18th in Honolulu, most likely at the Elks Club, and we will end with Pauhana drinks and pupu, and would love to see each of you there, because you each have a key role to play, and we'll be talking about all kinds of cutting edge technologies. And that might be a good run through, Julia, for the practice run for the coral reef task force. So we will stay in touch. If you're not on our mailing list, then please let us know and we will add you for future events. We have this usually every third Wednesday, but our next one, just because we'll be traveling to Suffolk County to check out their cesspool situation, will be on Wednesday, July 14th. And we will be letting you all know. But thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any follow-up or questions, Ramsey will follow up with you as well. Set up a meeting with the folks at Biomass, and then Cambrian if you want to do that as well. All right, mahalo.
Thanks,
joining us.
everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.